Welcome back to the Youngest Real Estate Podcast with Nate and Johanna. Today we're going to be talking about if right now is the time to buy real estate. So, Johanna, with that being said, would you say that right now is the time to purchase?
Um, I would say that we shouldn't even be inflicting our opinion on our clients, or other agents should be trying to sway their clients one way or the other by trying to answer that question. Like, we shouldn't be answering that question for them.
Well, I think it varies for everybody, but the overall general consensus is if you want to, right now, it's always the time to buy. It's like, when's the best time to plant a tree? It was 25 years ago. It's the second time yesterday. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's it's different for everybody, right? If you already own a home, maybe it doesn't make sense to go buy right now. But if you're renting an apartment or you're looking for a house, there's no better time than right now, I feel like.
Yep. And yes, interest rates are starting to go up a little bit, but historically, I mean, go back, however long you want to go back, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, they are as low as they've ever been.
Well, to piggyback off what you just said, I was having a conversation with someone and they're like, man, my grandma was paying a 17% interest rate and she was okay with it. It was just okay. And I'm
Yeah.
like, what? 17% interest rate? That's crazy. And then you hear people go, yeah, I'm going to wait for the interest rates. I want it like a 2.5%. And I'm like, you realize that was like never going to happen again.
Yeah. Yeah. Unless, we have another pandemic that we can't foresee. But I don't even like the question, because you're right. The answer is yes, right? Is now the time to buy real estate? Well, why are you asking? Well, you're probably asking because most of you're probably prepared. Your credit score is where it needs to be, or your clients, right? Your client's credit score is where it needs to be. They probably have the funds for a down payment. So what they're really asking is, should I time this?
Yeah, and you're 100% right. Should I time the market? Should I go off and do this? Is right. And what they're wanting is they're basically just wanting validation for their emotions,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because at the end of the day, like, as much as we want to say, hey, this needs to be a logical decision, there's a lot of emotions that go into it. And so whenever they're asking, a realtor, or they're asking their lender, they're asking their friends and family, they're not asking because, they want validation that they know, hey, right now it's the time to go do it, right? And so with that being said, I mean, it's like we said, it's different for everybody, but I would definitely say it's right now is definitely the time to do it, and I think the biggest reasons why you hear people say, oh no, right now is not the time, is because they're afraid, right? It's, they look back and they look at 08, they look at what the market's doing, right? So I mean, let me ask you this, right? If you have a client come in and ask you, hey, is right now the time to purchase, what are you telling them?
Well, okay. Well, first off, I always ask them, like, why are you purchasing, right? Are you purchasing, like, what's your motivation to buy? I guess, or is it because you have the need, like the family, like you have a growing family? Is it because your rent is just skyrocketed, as rents are skyrocketing? I'm experiencing that firsthand. Is it because, so what? Why are you asking me the question? And then we figure that out, because someone will, we're agents, right? So the first question people are going to ask is, hey, should I buy real estate? Like, oh, okay, well, like, what is your current situation? So one, let's get past that. So
Well, and you bring up a great point of the sense of that's the number one thing. If there's no motivation, then it probably doesn't make sense to go buy it, right? If you're just kicking tires and you're like, hey, I own a house, but I don't really want to move. I just want to go look. Well, doesn't make any sense. But if they're like, hey, I'm renting, hey, I want a bigger house, hey, I need to downsize, then there's definitely motivation for them to go and purchase a new home. I love that point that you brought up, because that's something that most people don't even think about.
And the reason I say that is because yes, I'm an agent, and I will never, like, if your situation doesn't make sense to buy, I'm not going to tell you to buy so that I can make a commission. That's just not who I am, and I know that's not who you are. So I'm never going to tell you, and I'm not answering this question, and we're not doing this podcast to sway as many people as we can to purchase a home. I'm not going to make a dime off of someone that doesn't need to buy. Like, I actually want to help you. And if renting makes more sense, then I'll help you rent. Or if not buying, right? If just whatever. So I backtrack. I backtrack to that because, one, again, I wholeheartedly want to help you purchase if I think that you need to be buying. I'm not gonna sway you. So if we come to the conclusion that right now, yes, it makes sense for you to buy because you do have a growing family, because you are overpaying in rent or whatever reason, then okay, then the conversation is, well, but then interest rates, but then the market, but then this, a
The interest
competition.
rates. The
Right.
interest rates are a great point, right? Because we touched on it just a few minutes ago, but I do want to kind of dive deep into that, right? is people are like, hey, should I buy because of the interest rates? You have a lot of people saying, hey, no, you should wait, you should do this, you should do that. Well, here's the thing. I mean, the Feds have already said they're going to raise the rate numerous times.
Mm-hmm.
And right before I walked in here, you're starting to see more and more buyers approach that 6% range, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of those things. And what you see a lot of is the people that are like, hey, right now it's not the right time to buy. Right now it's not the right time to buy. Same people that were screaming that a year ago. Here's the thing: had you bought a year ago, you
Yeah.
not only do you have $100,000 worth of equity. We'll touch on this briefly here in just a few minutes, but your interest rate also would have been a 2.5, 3.5,
Mm-hmm.
and now your rate's going to jump up by 2.5%. That's not going to stop because what they're doing is they're trying to curb inflation, and as
Right.
that continues to occur, your payments are going to go up. So not only is your buying power going to go down, but let's just assume you're looking at a $300,000 house. Your payments are going to jump up by $200 or $300. I mean, you've now in essence cost yourself $3,600 for the next foreseeable future per year because you decided to wait.
And as an agent, I would say don't scare them into it. Just have the conversation. Like, don't say,
Yeah.
"Hey, if you don't buy right now, then you're going to be looking at a 7% interest rate next year or
Of
whatever."
course.
Don't do that either. But what I like to tell my clients is, look, okay, right now you're asking me because it probably makes sense in your life to purchase a home, and if you wait, I can't tell you whether interest rates are going to be higher or lower. What I can tell you is that if they go higher, then you're going to pat yourself on the back for buying now, and if they go lower, then you refinance.
Yep.
Like, it's just, you're right, like, there's now is the best time to buy because
Well, and here's the thing: anybody that's ever tried to time the market is getting burned. 99% of the time. You were ultra lucky. Anytime that you ever try to time it, you always end up getting screwed. And I'm going to tell you, the people that were buying in late 2020, whenever the rates were super super low, they didn't think they were timing the market. They did it by pure accident. Every single one of my clients that were purchasing, pure accident. They didn't think that everybody was scared. Think about it. At that time, everybody was scared because they're like, we've never been here. We don't know if everybody's going to die from COVID. We don't know what's going to happen. And it was pure stupid luck that they lucked into the prices jumping up, an extraordinary amount while also getting these stupid low interest
right.
rates.
And you, as an agent, didn't sway them one way or the other. You
No.
you guided them when they said we're ready, and then okay, you come in as the expert and say, okay, you're ready to buy. Then I'm going to put you in the best position possible by negotiating as well as I know how to negotiate, finding you a good deal because that's my job, and representing you, to the best of my abilities. So when they come to you, don't sway them, whether it's whether interest rates are high, low, whether the market is competitive or not competitive, whether it's a seller buyer's market. Don't sway them in any direction. Do your job and do it to the best of you, and be the best agent for that client, and be the best agent that you can be.
Well, and so before we even dive into the market, I want to dive into why agents are saying this and what the agents are saying, right? And just in general, right? And I say agents, but just as like a society in general, I feel like there's a PTSD of
You're
08,
right,
right?
because at this point, yes, it's seeped into the media.
It's a fear, it's an overall fear. So many people totally got hammered in 08, and now there's an overwhelming fear. But here's the thing: I mean, if you look at 08 to today, there's a big difference, right? Like, people were buying houses in 08 that they had no income, they had no assets to show for it. They were ninja loans, and so it's just different nowadays. The income requirements are so much different, but they're preaching that same choir, and they're scaring people into thinking like, hey, maybe I
Because
shouldn't make
that's
this
their
move.
job, is
Yeah,
to
of course.
cause fear so that people can continue talking. Like, that's the phone call that I'm getting now whenever I have a client give me a call me, hey, I'm ready to buy, but I hear that prices are going up, and this and that. And where they hear that from? Well, probably the media or their neighbor or whatever, they're because it's clickbait.
Okay, so how do you this is a great segue into this point. How do you deal with that objection from your buyers without, and you never want to force, like what you said, but at the same time, our job is to give them all of the data, all the information. Let's say I come to you and I'm like, Joanna, listen, rates are going up, prices are going up. Should I buy right now? How are you handling that objection?
Okay, so after we answer the question of, well, why do you think you need to buy now, right?
Yep.
Okay,
So
and
we've
then
already got
we've
motivation.
addressed that. Okay, so you're motivated to buy. So now is the time to buy. And again, I'm careful about it, and I because I'm not trying to force them, right? I'm not trying to sway them. What I do want to let them know is, hey, if interest rates are historically low, they're still historically low even though they've gone up. And if you wait, they may go up, and if they go down again, you can refinance. Now, one thing I can assure you is that prices are going to go up, whether the whether it's because they are going to, I think they're going to stabilize, or they're going to keep going up as high as they're appreciating as quickly as they have been appreciating. In you look at, the past 100 years, real estate only goes in one direction and it goes up. Prices only go in one direction and they go up.
It's a hedge against
Right.
inflation.
So if there's a small dip, just and I'm getting local, but our market, I just don't see prices coming down because supply and demand. Like, we have way too many people coming in and just not enough homes.
Well, and you bring up a good point, and this is where, like, no matter what market you're in, I think that it's important to really have this point hit home. If you take nothing else from here, is like, if you know your data, then it's easy to support. It's easy to lay the facts out in front of your clients, right? So, like, in '08, homes that are selling today at like 550, 600, we're selling back in '08 for like $250,000, and that's after the crash. And so it's like, okay, let's just assume you buy right now. Real estate's not meant to be a short-term hold. And I tell all my clients that. I say, listen,
Exactly.
if you're trying to sell in 2 years, buying right now probably isn't for you.
And that's a really good point.
And I say, but if you're planning on being here for the average length that an average American does, which is about 7 to 10 years, you're going to see equity eventually. But if you plan on selling in a year, 2 years, 3 years, then no. If it were me, I wouldn't do it, because at the end of the day, there's too many uncertain things, right? And that's where, if you know your data, though, you can definitely support the point. Like, right now, our inventory is still historically low. Yes, the rates are going up, but here's the thing: until that supply starts ticking up, you're not going to see those prices slow down anytime soon. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, yes, the rates may be going up, but if you wait, we're still going to see. Even if we follow the trend of 2021, right, where we saw a peak in inventory in about July, August. Mm-hmm. We saw it get up to about a month and a half's worth of inventory, which was so much inventory at the time, right? But even if we still follow the same trend this year, to even get to a strong seller's market is considered 3 months. We at least have until the end of 2022 until it gets there. I mean, unless something just astronomical happens, right? And so, with that being said, if you know your data and you lay that out in front of the clients, the decision becomes so much easier. It's no longer an opinion. It's no longer, hey, I think the market's going to crash, or hey, I think prices are going to go up, or hey, I think this and that's going to happen. It's, hey, I know the inventory is low right now. I know eventually it's going to go up due to the interest rates. We know that. We know what they're trying to do. We know that the interest rates are going to go up because the feds have said it, that they're going to raise it several times. Mm-hmm. You go talk to any reputable loan officer, that we use, and they're going to tell you the same exact thing. And so if you base everything with facts, then it's going to support that, right? Instead of being like, hey, because of '08, I think things are going to crash. Well, it's a completely different situation, completely different world that we live in nowadays.
And again, I always like to step back and think and look at the bigger picture.
Yes.
In long term, okay, if this isn't going to be your forever home, then I always say, I'm an agent and I'm going to tell you not to sell. Why don't you rent it out? Why don't you have someone else pay for your mortgage and continue building equity and move on to your dream home, but have that, that investment that's going to create generational wealth. Like, think long term.
Most agents don't do that. Most agents, and I'm going to try to think about how to say this in a proper manner. They look so short term, and maybe not in the client's best interest, but maybe in the best interest of themselves, and they go and have the client sell. But here's the thing. I mean, some of these people have $1,600, $1,700 mortgages. Those aren't just coming around every single day. And yes, they can sell the house and redeploy those assets. But at the same time, if they can lease that, have somebody pay their mortgage and cash flow $500 a door, that's phenomenal, and so you bring up a great point there.
I accidentally fell into real estate, and it has been the biggest blessing that I want to pass on to everyone that I meet. And by that, I mean, I think I try, and this is where I do try and sway my clients, is looking at real estate as an investment, because I think that it's the easiest entry point for most people, for the majority of the population, to start building a portfolio, to start building generational wealth. Like, right now, yes, you're trying to find, the cutest house because you want to have parties and this and that. But think long term. Like, if you're going to have a bigger family, like, oh, well, I'll just sell it, because most people don't even know that they can that they don't need to pay off their first home before they can buy another one. Honestly, most of my clients tell me, well, don't I have to pay off this one before I can buy my dream home?
Well, and
No,
that's
like,
why there's such a lack of education throughout the process, though, right? And there's such and then I like where you're going with this as well in terms of the bigger picture, because like if you heard Brian Force talk, I think it was actually just a couple, like maybe like a week ago, he said, everybody expects to buy this house and then sell it for like a massive return, like just a crazy return. That's not the whole point. The whole point is to have a house instead of renting, right? So at the end of the day, whenever you're renting, all the money that you're paying each month, you literally
it's
don't see
going
that
down
again.
the drain.
Yeah, it's money that you'll never see back,
Yep.
right? To whereas whenever you're paying on that house, you're paying it down, you're building up, you're building up an asset. Maybe you have $100,000 in equity after 10 years, opposed to paying, I mean, shoot, 150 grand worth of rent. And that's where so many people expect to buy real estate and then like 5 years go sell it and make 50 grand. That's not the whole purpose of it. Not to mention, here's the other thing. I can tell you the number of people I talk to that are like, man, if I knew what I knew now, I'd buy every single house that I could have back in '08.
And I wouldn't have sold.
Well, what's the difference now?
Yeah.
What's the difference? Yes, it is. There are a lot more hurdles to go qualify for a house now than what there was. But what's the difference? You know what I mean?
And you only have now. Like, why are you going to get hung up on the past? You didn't do it. It's too late, right? And why are you going to worry about a future that you can't predict?
Well, here's what I'll say, right? So many people are like, "Oh man, I should have bought. I should have bought. I should have bought." Guys, nothing's going to slow down. Look at where wages were 20 years ago. Look where gas was 20 years ago. Nothing's going to stop going up. The cost of living is going to continue to go up. Real estate's going to follow that pattern. And especially with these houses that are selling for 300, 400, those houses are going to only continue to go up. Maybe not in the next 5 years, the way that we've seen it in the last, 2.5 years, but like
week.
in the last, yeah, in the last in the next 10 to 20 years, I mean, the way that those prices are going to go, I guarantee you're going to hear the same people say, "Man, I wish I would have bought houses 10 years ago." Yeah. So it's everything is relative. Everything's relative. Everything's, yes, the prices seem high right now, but I guarantee you in 15 years we're going to go, "Man, I wish I could buy a $350,000 house."
And I can tell, and I feel confident that if I tell all of my clients right now who ask me, should I buy real estate right now? And I tell them yes, and they purchase because I told them yes. 10 years from now, they're not going to come back and hate me because they have, okay, worst case scenario, they have 10 grand in equity, which
It's not going to happen. Yeah.
Right. Worst case scenario. I'm sorry that you made $10,000. I'm sorry that you now have $10,000 that no one was going to give to you. No one was just going to hand to you.
No, I totally understand what you're saying there. I think the biggest thing people have to realize is that it's one of those things that it's just, there's one of two options, right? You have to have a place to live. So you either buy a house or you continue to stay where you're at. I guess you have three. You can stay where you're at and you already own, or you're going to continue to rent. Most times the people that you hear say, "Hey, is right now the right time to buy," it's going to be people that are renting.
Right.
So you're either going to go get a new spot or you're going to rent. Well, if you do one of those two things, you're either going to be paying for something that's eventually going to become your own, or you're going to be giving money away to a landlord. So and that's what you have to look at.
And let me ask you, so when an investor approaches you and asks, should I buy real estate now? How do you answer that question?
So, and this is with all clients. I think you have to understand what their expectations are. You have to understand what their motivation is, right? Are they looking for a long-term rental? How much money are they putting down? Are they looking to buy and flip? So it's honestly, there's so many different variables in that question, right?
Yep.
So if they're looking to buy and flip, it's always a good time to buy if you're buying at the right number,
Yep.
right? Like the money's in the buy. If they're looking to buy and hold, what are their expectations, right? Are they wanting to cash flow $300 or $400 on the door? Because if so, that's tough, right? How much money are they planning on putting down? And so there's so many different aspects to that question, in my opinion. What would you say?
That's true, and you're right. You just have to find the right fit, right? If in our market, if the Dallas market doesn't make sense for a buy and hold right now, if you want a turnkey property that's move-in ready, and you want at least that 1% return, right? For if you want to say the property's worth $200,000 and you want it to rent for $2,000, well, that's probably not going to happen here in Dallas. You're not going to find that
No,
property unless you find other, creative ways of
unless
actually of
you basically
sourcing the
hit the
deal.
jackpot.
Right, right. But for the most part, you're not going to find that in Dallas. Okay, so then maybe then I tell my client, okay, so maybe this Dallas isn't the market for you. Well, let's find a market that is, right? Maybe it's going to be the Midwest. Maybe it's going to be East Texas. Like, I don't know.
Well, and sometimes you don't even have to go that far. I'll tell you, like, I've got a client about to close on a house over in Paris for, like, low 100,000. Like, I want to say it's anywhere from like $130 to $150, and he's going to cash flow. He's going to cash flow pretty nice. Now, at the same time, here's what you have to decide, right? Like, do you want to go that far out? Are you familiar with the area? Different things like that.
Exactly.
But I think
it's about finding the right fit.
exactly. So I would say the biggest thing whenever you're buying real estate right now is, what is your expectation of the property? What's your expectation of your situation? What's your motivation?
Mm-hmm.
And if you can figure out those things and make them align with the market, it will always be the right time to buy, regardless of interest rates, regardless of prices. So long, and let's mix in so long as you're able to qualify as well, right? Right now is always going to be the best time to buy.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's next year, 5 years, 10 years from now, it'll always be a great time.
I love that. I love that. And I mean, we could go on about that, but that'd be a never-ending conversation.
Of course, of course. Well, guys, thank you for watching. Go like, follow, and subscribe, and we look forward to seeing you guys next week. I should have winked.
You leave that in.